The elevator hummed as it climbed to the 47th floor of Caldwell Industries' sleek Atlanta headquarters, its mirrored walls reflecting Ava Thompson's poised expression. A Black American woman in her late 20s, Ava wore a tailored navy blazer and skirt, her braided hair swept into a neat updo. Her calm demeanor masked a heart pounding with purpose. Today was not just a job interview. It was the opening move in a carefully orchestrated plan to bring down Ethan Caldwell, the company's CEO and son of Robert Caldwell, the man who had destroyed her mother's life 8 years ago. Ava's fingers tightened around her leather portfolio, MBA from Emory University, and years of corporate experience, her weapons in this silent war. She had landed the role of Ethan's assistant, a position notorious for its turnover, with no one lasting more than 3 days under his exacting standards. This was her chance to infiltrate the heart of Caldwell Industries and expose its corrupt legacy. The elevator doors slid open, revealing a world of polished marble and floor-to-ceiling windows framed by Atlanta's skyline. The air carried the faint scent of expensive coffee and ambition. Ava stepped forward, her heels clicking softly, each step a reminder of her mother, Grace Thompson, a vibrant community organizer whose life was shattered when Robert Caldwell falsely accused her of fraud. The accusation, splashed across headlines, had branded Grace a thief, stripping her of her career and dignity. She died 2 years later, her spirit broken, leaving Ava with a promise whispered at her graveside: justice. Now, standing in the enemy's domain, Ava felt that promise burning in her chest. "Ms. Thompson?" A woman in her 50s, clutching a tablet like a shield, approached with a nervous smile. "I'm Susan Carter, HR Director. Mr. Caldwell is ready for you." Susan's voice carried a tremor, her eyes darting toward the corner office at the end of the hall. Ava had done her research. Ethan Caldwell, a white American in his mid-30s, had burned through 19 assistants in the past 10 months. The last one had left a resignation note scrawled on a napkin, fleeing after a single day. "Thank you, Susan," Ava said, her voice steady and professional. "I'm grateful for the opportunity." Susan's brows lifted, as if surprised by Ava's composure. She whispered just a word of advice, guiding Ava toward the office. "Maintain eye contact. He values confidence. And whatever you do, don't show fear. He can sense it." Ava nodded, a faint smile tugging at her lips. If only Susan knew the years she'd spent preparing for this moment, studying Ethan's business moves, memorizing his habits, and steeling herself for this confrontation. Fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. The corner office loomed ahead, its glass walls offering a panoramic city view. Ethan Caldwell stood with his back to the door, gazing out at the skyline, his silhouette sharp in a charcoal suit tailored to his broad shoulders. His dark blonde hair was neatly trimmed, but a slight tousle suggested he'd been running his fingers through it, a rare hint of restlessness in a man known for control. "Close the door," he said without turning, his voice low and commanding, cutting through the room's silence. Ava complied, her eyes scanning the space. Awards lined a shelf. Inc. 5,000, Forbes 30, under 30. But they felt cold, utilitarian. A framed photo on his desk caught her attention. Robert Caldwell, his father, staring sternly into the camera. The sight sent a jolt through her, memories of her mother's tear-streaked face flashing in her mind. "Mom thought this was for you," her resolve hardening like steel. "Ava." "Thompson," Ethan said, finally turning to face her. His blue eyes, sharp and unnervingly direct, studied her as if reading a contract's fine print. MBA from Emory, 3 years at Harper & Stone. Glowing references. Overqualified for an assistant role, He stepped closer, his presence filling the room. "So, why are you here?" The question was a blade, slicing through her carefully crafted facade. Ava held his gaze, her years of preparation steadying her. "I thrive on challenges, Mr. Caldwell. Working for someone of your caliber is the ultimate test." Her words were measured, diplomatic, but carried a truth. This job was her path to justice. A flicker of a smile crossed Ethan's lips, gone as quickly as it appeared. "My caliber," he echoed, moving to his desk. "Let's be clear about what that means. I demand perfection. Mistakes, excuses, personal drama. I don't tolerate them. I work 16-hour days and expect my assistant to anticipate my needs before I speak them. Understood?" "Completely," Ava replied, her voice unwavering. She saw a framed article on a shelf behind him, its headline searing into her. "Caldwell Industries uncovers internal fraud." Her mother's name, Grace Thompson, was buried in the text, labeled a thief, her reputation destroyed without proof. Ava's fingers twitched, but she kept her expression neutral. "Your last assistant said the same," Ethan continued, leaning back in his chair. "What makes you different?" Ava paused, her mind racing. "Because I have a reason to stay that you'll never understand," she thought. Instead, she said, "I'm here because I believe excellence is about meeting and surpassing impossible standards." Ethan's eyes narrowed, a spark of curiosity or recognition flashing. "We'll see," he said, handing her a thick folder. "Your first task: analyze our first quarter merger data, cross-referenced with market trends, by the end of the day. The data is scattered across 5 departments, most of whom will claim they're too busy. Please don't disappoint me, Ms. Thompson." Ava accepted the folder, her fingers brushing the cool paper. "Consider it done." As she turned to leave, Ethan's voice stopped her. "One more thing. Loyalty is everything to me. Betrayal is unforgivable. Keep that in mind." Ava nodded, her heart a tight knot. "Understood, Mr. Caldwell." She stepped into the outer office, the weight of her deception settling like a stone in her chest. Phase 1 was complete. She was inside Caldwell Industries, perfectly positioned to dismantle the empire that had crushed her family. But as she glanced back at Ethan, still staring out at the city, she couldn't shake the fleeting warmth in his eyes when she'd spoken of excellence. He wasn't the monster she'd imagined. Not yet. Ava pushed the thought aside, settling at her desk. She had a mission, and no flicker of humanity would deter her. The corporate battlefield awaited, and Ava Thompson had just fired her first shot in a war Ethan Caldwell didn't know had begun. Ava Thompson sat at her new desk outside Ethan Caldwell's office, the weight of the thick folder he'd handed her resting heavily in her hands. The task was a gauntlet thrown down. Analyze Caldwell Industries' first quarter merger data, cross-referenced with market trends, by the end of the day. 5 departments held the scattered pieces, and Ethan had warned her that most would resist cooperating. Ava opened the folder, her eyes scanning spreadsheets and memos. This was no ordinary assignment. It was designed to break her, just as it had broken the 19 assistants before her. But Ava was no stranger to pressure. She'd spent years honing her skills, preparing for this moment when she could prove herself indispensable while inching closer to her true goal: exposing the corruption tied to Ethan's father, Robert Caldwell, who had framed her mother, Grace, for fraud. She took a steadying breath, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she drafted emails to department heads. Each message was polite but firm, leveraging her research on their roles to appeal to their egos. She wrote to the head of acquisitions, "Your expertise on the Harper deal is critical to ensuring accuracy." To the market analysis team, she noted, "Your projections are the backbone of this report." By noon, she'd secured responses from 3 departments, their data trickling into her inbox. The other two, finance and operations, stonewalled her, citing tight schedules. Ava smiled faintly. She'd expected resistance. Leaving her desk, she navigated the bustling halls of Caldwell Industries, her heels clicking with purpose. In the finance department, she found the manager, David Patel, buried in paperwork. "Mr. Patel," she said, her voice warm but authoritative. "I know you're swamped, but Ethan needs the merger cost breakdowns by 3 p.m. I can help organize your data if you point me to the files." David hesitated, then nodded, impressed by her initiative. In operations, she used a similar tactic, offering to streamline their report in exchange for the data. By 4 p.m., she had everything she needed. At her desk, Ava worked with relentless focus, cross-referencing figures and weaving them into a concise analysis. The numbers told a story of bold acquisitions, but hinted at irregularities, discrepancies that echoed the fraud her mother had been accused of. She filed the observation away, her mission sharpening. By 7:30 p.m., as the office emptied, she finalized the report, a 20-page, thorough and insightful document. She emailed it to Ethan, then leaned back, exhaustion mingling with quiet triumph. Minutes later, Ethan emerged from his office, his tie slightly loosened, a rare sign of fatigue. "You're still here?" he said, his blue eyes studying her with curiosity and approval. He held a printed copy of her report, its pages marked with notes. "This is impressive. How did you get the finance to cooperate? David's been dodging me for weeks." Ava met his gaze, her composure unwavering. "I asked nicely. Sometimes honey works better than vinegar, Mr. Caldwell." A ghost of a smile crossed his lips, softening his sharp features. "Noted," he said, flipping through the report. "You've highlighted trends I hadn't considered. Most assistants would have just compiled the data and called it a day." "I don't do half measures," Ava replied, her words carrying a double meaning. She was here to excel, not just to survive, but to gain his trust for her ultimate purpose. Ethan nodded, his expression unreadable. "Good. I expect this level of work every day. Don't let it slip." He paused at the door, glancing back. "And Ava? Call me Ethan when it's just us." The informality caught her off guard, a crack in his corporate armor. She nodded, managing a small smile. "Understood, Ethan." As he disappeared into his office, Ava's gaze fell on a framed article on a nearby shelf, its headline a knife to her heart. "Caldwell Industries uncovers internal fraud." Her mother's name, Grace Thompson, was buried in the text, a scapegoat for a crime she didn't commit. The sight reignited her resolve. But Ethan's unexpected warmth lingered, a dangerous distraction. She gathered her things, her mind racing. Across the hall, a woman approached, her blonde hair perfectly styled, her designer suit exuding wealth. "You must be Ava," she said, her voice smooth but edged with ice. "I'm Claire Bennett. I work closely with Ethan." Her handshake was firm, her green eyes assessing Ava like a rival. Ava recognized her from her research, Harvard Law graduate, daughter of board member Harold Bennett, and Ethan's on-again, off-again romantic interest. Claire's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Impressive. Surviving your first day. Most don't make it past lunch." "I'm not most people," Ava said evenly, holding Claire's gaze. Claire's lips twitched, a hint of challenge in her expression. "We'll see. Ethan's particular about boundaries. Don't get too comfortable." The warning hung in the air, territorial and sharp. As Claire walked away, her heels echoing, Ava's instincts prickled. Claire's demeanor suggested she knew more than she let on. But how? Ava pushed the thought aside, returning to her desk. She'd survived the first test, proving her competence, but the real battle was beginning. Claire's presence, was a new obstacle, and Ava sensed the war for justice would be fought on more fronts than she'd planned. Ava Thompson leaned back in her chair, the glow of her computer screen casting shadows across her desk. It was her third day at Caldwell Industries, and she'd already earned a reputation among the staff for taming the untamable. Ethan Caldwell's schedule, a labyrinth of meetings and deadlines, bent to her will. She'd reorganized his calendar, streamlined his correspondence, and anticipated his needs with a precision that left colleagues whispering in the break room. But Ava's focus wasn't on their praise. Her mission, to uncover evidence of the corruption tied to Ethan's father, Robert Caldwell, who had framed her mother, Grace, for fraud, burned brighter than ever. Yet Ethan's unexpected warmth, like his casual, "Call me Ethan" the day before, gnawed at her resolve, a crack in the armor she'd built. As she finalized an email to confirm Ethan's 2:00 p.m. board meeting, a shadow fell across her desk. Ava looked up to find Claire Bennett standing there, her designer handbag slung over one shoulder, her blonde hair catching the light like a halo. But there was nothing angelic about her expression. Claire's green eyes were sharp and calculating, as if sizing Ava up for a fight and working late again, Ava? Claire's voice was honeyed, but the undertone was pure steel. "You're making quite the impression." Ava saved her document and stood, meeting Claire's gaze with calm defiance. "Just doing my job, Ms. Bennett." She thoroughly researched Claire. Harvard Law graduate, daughter of board member Harold Bennett, and Ethan's on and off romantic interest for 3 years. Office gossip painted Claire as ambitious, her polished exterior hiding a fierce loyalty to her family's legacy. Ava sensed Claire's visit wasn't casual. "Please, call me Claire," she said, her smile tight. "We're practically colleagues, given how close I am to Ethan." The emphasis on close was deliberate, a line drawn in the sand. Ava kept her expression neutral. "Nice to meet you, Claire. I've heard you're a key player in legal affairs." Claire's lips twitched, as if amused by the flattery. "I do what I can to protect Caldwell Industries' interests," she said, stepping closer, her heels clicking on the floor. "Which is why I'm curious about you. Most assistants crumble under Ethan's demands, yet here you are, thriving. What's your secret?" Ava's pulse quickened, but she kept her voice steady. "No secret. I'm good at what I do." Claire's smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, I'm sure. But Ethan's particular about who he trusts. He doesn't mix business with personal entanglements." The warning was clear, a territorial claim staked with precision. Ava tilted her head, unfazed. "I'm here to work, nothing more." Claire studied her for a long moment, searching for a crack in Ava's facade. "Good," she said finally, her tone laced with challenge. "Because Ethan values loyalty above all else. Betray that, and you'll find no mercy here." She turned to leave, then paused, glancing back. "Oh, and Ava? I looked into your background. Emory's a fine school, but it's interesting how little there is about you before that. Almost as if you appeared out of nowhere." Ava's stomach tightened. Claire's words weren't a casual observation. They were a probe, a hint that she suspected more than she let on. "I keep a low profile," Ava replied, her smile polite but guarded. Claire's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something dangerous passing through them. "We all have our secrets," she said softly. "Just be careful, yours don't catch up with you." With that, she walked away, her silhouette disappearing down the hall. Ava sank into her chair, her mind racing. Claire's veiled threat suggested she knew something, or was fishing for it. Ava had meticulously scrubbed her digital footprint to hide her connection to Grace Thompson. But Claire's family ties to Harold Bennett, a board member with a murky reputation, gave her access to resources Ava couldn't underestimate. Harold had been Robert Caldwell's right-hand man during the fraud scandal that ruined her mother. She could have been a formidable obstacle if Claire had protected her father's secrets. Ava's thoughts were interrupted by Ethan's voice from the doorway. "Ava, I need the board meeting brief now." He stood there, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder, his blue eyes tired but focused. Ava handed him the prepared brief, their fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through her, and she cursed herself for noticing how his jaw tensed as he scanned the document. "This is solid," he said, his tone grudgingly impressed. "You've got a knack for cutting through the noise." "Thank you," Ava said, forcing her focus back to her mission. Ethan lingered, as if about to say more, then nodded and returned to his office. Ava watched him go, her resolve wavering. Ethan wasn't the cold tyrant she'd expected. His praise, though rare, felt genuine, and his exhaustion hinted at burdens she hadn't anticipated. She shook her head, banishing the thought. He was still Robert Caldwell's son, tied to the legacy that destroyed her mother. Ava opened her laptop as the office quieted, pulling up her encrypted notes. She'd uncovered a lead, a sealed file in the company's archives, rumored to contain details of the fraud case. If she could access it, she might find proof of Harold Bennett's involvement, and whether Ethan was complicit. But Claire's warning echoed in her mind, reminding her she wasn't the only one playing a dangerous game. Ava closed her laptop, her determination hardening. Claire Bennett was a threat, but Ava had come too far to back down. The battle for justice had just gained a new adversary, and Ava would need to outsmart her to survive. 2 weeks into her role at Caldwell Industries, Ava Thompson became a quiet staff legend. She navigated Ethan Caldwell's relentless demands with an almost uncanny precision, anticipating his needs before he voiced them. She rescheduled meetings with board members, streamlined reports, and even memorized his coffee order. Black, no sugar, served precisely at 2 p.m. Just outside his office, her desk was a command center of efficiency. Still, beneath her polished exterior, Ava's mission burned: to uncover evidence linking Ethan's father, Robert Caldwell, to the fraud that destroyed her mother, Grace Thompson. Yet, Ethan's moments of unexpected warmth, his rare smiles, his quiet thank you after her merger analysis, chipped away at her certainty, making her question whether he was the enemy she'd imagined. On a humid Atlanta afternoon, Ava was reviewing Ethan's itinerary when her phone buzzed with an urgent alert from the company's internal system. An accident at a construction site in Midtown. A worker had fallen from a scaffolding, and Ethan was needed immediately. She found him in his office, his blue eyes scanning a contract, his jaw tight with focus. "Ethan," she said, her voice steady despite the urgency. "There's been an incident at the Midtown site. A worker's injured. They need you there now." Ethan's head snapped up, his expression shifting from concentration to concern. "How bad?" he asked, already grabbing his jacket. "Serious but stable," Ava replied, relaying the details she'd gathered. "I've alerted your driver." Ethan shook his head. "No time. I'll drive myself." He paused at the door, his gaze meeting hers. "Cancel my afternoon. This takes priority." Ava nodded, noting the strain in his voice, a crack in his usual composure. As he left, she caught the rigid set of his shoulders, a sign of the weight he carried. Ava spent the next hour coordinating with the site manager, ensuring medical teams were on scene and the worker's family was notified. Her efficiency was second nature, but her thoughts lingered on Ethan's reaction. He hadn't hesitated to prioritize the injured worker, a stark contrast to the cold corporate titan she'd expected. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. "People show their true selves in a crisis, Ava." And she pushed it away, unwilling to soften toward the son of the man who'd ruined Grace's life. By 6 p.m., Ava was alone in the office, compiling a report on the incident when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't trust him, Ava. Check his office tonight." Her breath caught, the words chilling her. Who knew her name? Who suspected her intentions? Claire Bennett's warning from days earlier flashed in her mind. We all have our secrets. But Ava had covered her tracks carefully. The text felt like a trap, yet its urgency gnawed at her. She glanced at Ethan's closed office door, temptation warring with caution. Instead of acting immediately, Ava drove to the hospital where the injured worker, Marcus Lee, was recovering. She'd assembled care packages, essentials for his family, including gift cards and handwritten notes, driven by an instinct she couldn't explain. At the hospital, she found Ethan in the waiting room, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up, speaking quietly with Marcus's wife. He said we'd cover all medical expenses, but his voice was low and firm. And Marcus will have a job when he's ready to return. The woman's eyes filled with tears, and she clasped Ethan's hand in gratitude. Ava approached, handing over the care packages. Ethan's gaze met hers, a flicker of surprise softening his features. "You didn't have to come," he said, taking a package. "I wanted to," Ava replied, her voice quieter than she intended. "It's what anyone would do." Ethan studied her, his blue eyes searching. "Not anyone." "Thank you, Ava." The sincerity in his tone sent an unwelcome warmth through her, and she looked away, focusing on Marcus's wife to avoid the feeling. Back at the office, Ava sat at her desk, the mysterious text still burning in her mind. Ethan returned shortly after, looking drained, but resolute. "Marcus is stable," he said, pausing by her desk. "His family's taken care of for now." Ava nodded, her fingers hovering over her keyboard. "I've drafted a statement for the press, emphasizing safety improvements. It's in your inbox." Ethan's lips curved into a faint smile. "You're making it hard to imagine this place without you." The words hit her like a punch, stirring a mix of guilt and something softer, more dangerous. She was here to destroy him, to expose the truth about his father's crimes. Yet his kindness made her mission feel like a betrayal. "Just doing my job," she said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. As if sensing her unease, Ethan lingered, then nodded and retreated to his office. Alone, Ava stared at her phone, the anonymous text glaring back. "Check his office tonight." The temptation was overwhelming, but so was the risk. Claire's probing, Ethan's humanity, and now this mysterious message. It was as if the walls of Caldwell Industries were closing in. Ava stood, her decision crystallizing. She wouldn't act rashly, but couldn't ignore the text either. Tonight, she'd return to the office after hours, searching for answers. But as she gathered her things, Ethan's tired smile lingered in her mind, a reminder that the man she'd come to destroy was proving far more human than she'd planned. The line between justice and betrayal was blurring, and Ava wasn't sure which side she'd land on. Ava Thompson drove through Atlanta's neon-lit streets, the weight of the day pressing against her chest. The mysterious text, "Don't trust him, Ava. Check his office tonight," burned in her mind, its cryptic warning a splinter she couldn't dislodge. Her mission to expose Caldwell Industries' corruption, rooted in her mother Grace Thompson's unjust disgrace, had seemed clear 2 weeks ago. But Ethan Caldwell's humanity, his concern for the injured worker, his quiet gratitude, had muddied the waters. Claire Bennett's probing and this anonymous message suggested someone was watching her, threatening to unravel her carefully laid plans. Ava's grip tightened on the steering wheel. She needed clarity, and she wouldn't find it in the sterile halls of Caldwell Industries. Her modest apartment in the West End welcomed her with familiar comfort. A cozy living room with a worn sofa, a shelf of well-loved books, and a small altar by the window where a photo of Grace smiled softly. Ava set her bag down, her eyes lingering on the image. With her warm eyes and fierce spirit, Grace had been a community organizer, rallying neighbors for better schools and safer streets until Robert Caldwell's false fraud accusation destroyed her. Ava traced the frame, her throat tight. "I'm so close, Mom," she whispered, "but it's getting complicated." She sank onto the sofa, pulling out her phone to video call Maya, her childhood friend, and the one person who knew the full weight of her mission. Maya's face appeared on the screen, her curls pulled back, her smile bright but tinged with concern. "Girl, you look exhausted," Maya said, leaning closer to the camera. "How's the corporate espionage going?" Ava managed a weak laugh. "It's not espionage, it's justice." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Call it what you want, but you're playing a dangerous game. That text you sent me about. Sounds like someone's onto you." Ava nodded, recounting Claire's veiled threat and the anonymous message. "It's Claire, but I don't know how she'd connect me to Mom. I've been careful." Maya frowned, setting down her coffee mug. "Thorough doesn't mean invisible." "You're in deep, Ava. This isn't just about files or evidence anymore. You're spending all your time in that office, and it's eating you up. When's the last time you did something for yourself?" The question stung. Ava's life had narrowed to her mission since Grace's death. Her evenings were spent poring over company records, her weekends tracking old colleagues of her mother's for leads. She hadn't been to a poetry reading, her old passion, or cooked a proper meal in weeks. "I don't have time for me," Ava admitted, her voice soft. "Not until Mom's name is cleared." Maya's expression softened. "Grace wouldn't want you to lose yourself in this. She raised you to fight, sure, but also to live. Promise me you'll take a breath. Maybe go to that jazz night at the community center this weekend." Ava hesitated, the idea of normalcy feeling foreign. She said, "I'll think about it," though her mind was already drifting back to the text. Maya sighed. "You're stubborn, just like her. Just be careful, okay? If Claire's sniffing around, she's not playing." "And Ethan? You said he's not what you expected. What if he's not the bad guy?" The words echoed Ava's doubts, stirring unease. "He's still Robert Caldwell's son," she said, more to convince herself than Maya. "I can't trust him." But the memory of Ethan at the hospital, his sleeves rolled up, his voice gentle with Marcus's wife, lingered. She ended the call with a promise to check in tomorrow, then stood, moving to the altar. Beside Grace's photo was a journal, its pages filled with Ava's notes from the past 2 years, clues about the fraud case, names of Robert's allies, and a single line in Grace's handwriting, copied from a letter. "The truth is worth everything." Ava's resolve hardened, but Maya's words gnawed at her. She glanced at her reflection in the window, seeing the toll of her mission, shadows under her eyes, tension in her jaw. She'd sacrificed friendships, hobbies, even sleep, all for justice. Was it worth it if it cost her soul? The text flashed in her mind again, urging her to search Ethan's office. It was a risk, but doing nothing was riskier. If Claire, or someone else, knew her secret, she had to act before they could expose her. She grabbed her keys, slipping back into her blazer. The office would be empty now, the perfect time to investigate. As she drove back to Caldwell Industries, the city's lights blurred past, a reminder of the life she'd put on hold. Her mother's voice echoed again. "Fight, but don't forget to live." And Ava pushed it down. Living could wait. Justice couldn't. The building loomed ahead, its glass facade dark against the night sky. Ava used her keycard, her heart pounding as she entered the elevator. Whatever she found in Ethan's office would bring her closer to the truth or destroy everything she'd built. The doors closed, carrying her toward a choice that could change everything. The elevator hummed as it carried Ava Thompson to the 47th floor of Caldwell Industries, the silence of the late-night office amplifying her racing pulse. The anonymous text, "Don't trust him, Ava. Check his office tonight," had driven her back to the heart of her enemy's domain. Her mission to expose the corruption tied to Ethan Caldwell's father, Robert, who had framed her mother, Grace Thompson, for fraud, had been her guiding star for years. But Ethan's kindness at the hospital, his genuine concern for the injured worker, had shaken her certainty. With Claire Bennett's probing and this mysterious message, Ava felt the walls closing in. She needed answers, and Ethan's office held the key. Her keycard granted access to the executive floor, the hallway dim under emergency lights. Ava moved swiftly, her heels muffled on the carpet. Ethan's office door was unlocked, a surprising lapse for a man who fiercely guarded his trust. She slipped inside, her breath catching at the sight of the desk where she'd seen the damning article about her mother's disgrace. The photo of Robert Caldwell stared down at her, its stern gaze a silent accusation. Ava pushed the memory aside, her focus narrowing to a locked filing cabinet in the corner, half hidden behind a bookshelf. She'd noticed the cabinet during her first day, its keyhole a taunt she hadn't dared answer until now. Using a paperclip and skills honed from late-night research, she worked the lock, her hands steady despite the risk. The cabinet clicked open, revealing neatly labeled folders. Her fingers froze on one marked Thompson Investigation. Her mother's name, typed in stark black ink, sent a jolt through her. She pulled it out with trembling hands, spreading the contents across Ethan's desk. The first document was a private investigator's report, dated 3 years ago. It details Ethan's efforts to uncover the truth about the fraud scandal that ruined Grace. In Ethan's precise script, handwritten notes outlined discrepancies in Robert's files, pointing to Harold Bennett, Claire's father and a senior board member, as the true culprit. Bennett had siphoned funds, using Grace's access codes to frame her. Another page showed Ethan's correspondence with a law firm, building a case to clear Grace's name posthumously. At the bottom, a note in Ethan's hand reads that Grace Thompson was innocent. "I'll make this right." Ava's world tilted. Ethan wasn't complicit. He was her ally, working to undo his father's wrongs. The realization hit like a wave, guilt and relief crashing together. She'd come to destroy him, but he'd been fighting for her mother's justice. Before she could process further, a sharp voice cut through the darkness. "Looking for something, Ava?" Ava spun around, her heart lurching. Claire Bennett stood in the doorway, her silhouette backlit by the hallway's faint glow. Her green eyes glinted with malice, her arms crossed. "Or should I say Ava Thompson?" Claire stepped forward, her heels clicking ominously. "You thought you could waltz in here, play the perfect assistant, and no one would notice the resemblance to your mother? I found her photo in the HR archives, buried in old employee records. It wasn't hard to put two and two together." Ava's mouth went dry. Claire had sent the text, luring her here to catch her in the act. "What do you want, Claire?" she asked, her voice low but firm, buying time to think. Claire's smile was cold, predatory. "I want you gone. You're a threat to everything my family's built. My father's side ventures funded my education, career, and life. Ethan's little investigation into your mother's case could ruin us. I've been delaying his efforts, losing files, redirecting witnesses, for years." Ava's anger flared, but she kept it in check. "You framed my mother to protect your father's crimes?" Claire's laugh was bitter. "I was in law school when it happened, but I knew enough. Dad needed a scapegoat, And your mother was convenient. Ethan's obsession with the truth is noble, but it's dangerous. So I sent you that text, hoping you'd do something stupid like this." She gestured to the open cabinet. "Sneaking into his office? That's grounds for termination. Or worse." Ava's mind raced. Claire's admission confirmed Harold's guilt, but it also trapped her. If Claire exposed her, Ethan would learn her true identity before she could explain. "Ava said you're protecting a thief," her voice steady despite the stakes. "And you're sabotaging Ethan to do it." Claire's eyes narrowed. "Ethan trusts me. He doesn't know I've been stalling his investigation. And he won't believe you. Not when I show him you've been rifling through his files." Ava closed the folder, and her resolve was hardening. "You're wrong about him. He's not blind to the truth." Claire stepped closer, her voice a hiss. "Please don't test me, Ava. Leave now, or I'll make sure Ethan sees you as the liar you are." The threat hung heavy, but Ava held her ground, her eyes locked on Claire's. "I'm not going anywhere." Claire's expression darkened, but she turned and left without another word, her heels echoing down the hall. Ava stood frozen, the documents in her hands a lifeline and a burden. Ethan tried to clear her mother's name, but Claire's interference meant the truth was still buried. Ava carefully returned the files, and her decision was made. She'd stay, not just for justice, but to protect Ethan from Claire's betrayal. The game had shifted, and Ava was no longer just a hunter. She was a guardian of the truth Ethan was fighting for. Ava Thompson stood alone in Ethan Caldwell's darkened office, the weight of her discovery settling like a stone in her chest. The folder she'd found, Thompson Investigation, revealed Ethan's secret mission to clear her mother, Grace Thompson, of the fraud orchestrated by Harold Bennett, Claire's father. Claire's confrontation had upended everything. Her admission of sabotaging Ethan's investigation and her knowledge of Ava's true identity were chilling threats. As Ava carefully closed the filing cabinet, Claire's parting words echoed. "Leave now, or I'll make sure Ethan sees you as the liar you are." Ava's mission to expose Caldwell Industries' corruption had been her North Star. But now, with Ethan as an ally and Claire as a predator, the path forward was a minefield. Back at her apartment, Ava paced her living room, the photo of Grace on her altar watching silently. The clock read 1 a.m., but sleep was impossible. Claire's ultimatum was clear. Resign by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or she'd expose Ava's deception to Ethan, framing her as a thief caught rummaging through confidential files. Ava's fingers brushed the journal beside Grace's photo, its pages filled with her plans for justice. But Ethan's face, his tired smile at the hospital, his handwritten note vowing to right her mother's wrong, kept intruding, softening the edges of her resolve. She'd come to destroy him, yet the thought of hurting him now felt like a betrayal of something more profound. Ava sank onto her sofa, her phone buzzing with a notification. It was a calendar reminder for Ethan's morning meeting, a mundane task that grounded her in her role as his assistant. She'd become indispensable, precisely anticipating his needs, which earned his trust. But trust was a double-edged sword. If Claire followed through, Ethan would see her as a liar, a schemer who'd infiltrated his company maliciously. Ava's chest tightened at the thought of his blue eyes turning cold, the warmth she'd glimpsed replaced by betrayal. She opened her laptop, pulling up her encrypted notes. The evidence in Ethan's office confirmed Harold Bennett's guilt, but Claire's interference meant the truth was still buried. Ava could stay, fight to expose Harold, and risk Claire's wrath. Or she could leave, protecting Ethan from the pain of her deception, but abandoning her mother's justice. The choice was impossible, a tug-of-war between the vow she'd made at Grace's grave and the feelings she hadn't expected to grow for Ethan. Her mind drifted to Claire's motives. Claire had admitted her father's fraud funded her privileged life. Her Harvard degree, her designer wardrobe, her influence at Caldwell Industries. But there was more, Ava sensed. Claire's desperation to protect Harold wasn't just about money, but identity. She'd built her career on the Bennett name, and its fall would strip her of everything she'd fought to become. Ava understood that kind of loyalty, how family could anchor and imprison you. Grace had been her anchor, her fight for justice a tether to the mother she'd lost. But Ethan's kindness, his quiet determination to right his father's wrongs, was loosening that tether, making her question what she was fighting for. Ava's phone buzzed again, with a text from Maya, her childhood friend. "You okay? You didn't call back." Ava hesitated, then typed, "Complicated. I found proof that Ethan was trying to clear Mom's name, but Claire knew who I was. She's threatening to tell him." Maya's reply was swift. "Get out, Ava. This is too dangerous. You've got the truth. Use it later, when you're safe." Ava stared at the screen, Maya's pragmatism clashing with her stubborn resolve. Leaving would be safe, but it would mean abandoning Ethan to Claire's manipulation, letting her sabotage his investigation further. She stood, moving to the window where Atlanta's skyline glittered. Grace loved this city. Its vibrancy is a backdrop to her community work. Ava had inherited that love, but her mission had consumed it, turning her into a shadow of the woman who used to write poetry and dance to jazz. Now, faced with Claire's ultimatum, Ava felt the weight of her choices. Staying meant risking everything: her cover, her heart, the fragile trust she'd built with Ethan. Leaving meant betraying her mother's memory and abandoning the man who'd unknowingly become her ally. Ava's decision crystallized as dawn broke, painting the sky in shades of pink. She wouldn't run. Claire's threat was a test, and Ava had never backed down from a challenge. She'd return to the office, play her role as the perfect assistant, and find a way to protect Ethan's investigation while exposing Harold. But the cost loomed large. If Claire had acted first, Ava's deception would have been laid bare, and the man she was beginning to care for would have seen her as the enemy. She clutched Grace's journal, whispering, "I'm doing this for you, Mom, but it's getting harder to know what's right." Ava steeled herself for the battle ahead as she dressed for the day. Claire had drawn a line, but Ava was ready to cross it. The truth was within reach, and she'd fight for it, even if it meant risking her fragile connection with Ethan. The elevator awaited, ready to carry her back to Caldwell Industries, where her next move could either secure justice or destroy everything she'd come to hold dear. Ava Thompson stepped off the elevator onto the 47th floor of Caldwell Industries, her heart a tight knot as she clutched her resignation letter. Claire Bennett's ultimatum: resign by 5 p.m. or be exposed as a liar, loomed like a guillotine. Ava's discovery the previous night that Ethan Caldwell was working to clear her mother, Grace Thompson's, name had shifted her mission from revenge to protecting Ethan's investigation. But Claire's threat to reveal her true identity as Grace's daughter, who'd infiltrated the company with vengeful intent, jeopardized everything. Ava had decided to stay, to fight for justice, but the cost of her deception was about to come due. The office buzzed with an unusual energy as she approached her desk, a sense of chaos she couldn't place. Susan Carter, the HR director, rushed toward her, eyes wide with panic. "Ava, thank God you're here. Ethan needs you in his office. Now. It's urgent." Ava's stomach dropped. "What's happened?" she asked, her voice steady, despite the dread pooling inside. Susan lowered her voice. "FBI agents are here. They raided Harold Bennett's home this morning. Something about financial crimes and evidence tampering. Claire's been calling Ethan nonstop, but he's not taking her calls. Ava's mind reeled. The investigation into Harold Bennett, Claire's father and the true culprit behind the fraud that ruined Grace, had broken wide open. Had Ethan's efforts triggered this? Or had Claire's sabotage backfired? Ava hurried to Ethan's office, the resignation letter crinkling in her pocket. Inside, Ethan stood surrounded by 3 federal agents in navy blazers, their badges glinting under the fluorescent lights. Legal documents littered his desk, and his face was a mask of grim determination. He glanced up as Ava entered, his blue eyes briefly softening. "Ava, this is Agent Carter," he said, gesturing to a woman with sharp features. "She's leading the investigation into Harold Bennett. Ava's been instrumental in organizing our documentation." Agent Carter studied Ava, her gaze piercing. "Ms. Thompson, we'll need to speak with you later about your access to confidential files related to the Grace Thompson case." Ava nodded, her throat tight. In this context, mentioning her mother's name was a jolt, but she kept her composure. Ethan continued, addressing the agent. "Agent Carter, I want to be clear. Harold Bennett's actions do not reflect Caldwell Industries' current values. We've been working to uncover the truth and make amends for past wrongs." Ava's heart pounded. Ethan's words confirmed his commitment to justice, but also underscored the risk she faced. Her deception could surface if the FBI were digging into Grace's case. Before Agent Carter could respond, the office door burst open, and Claire stormed in, her usual polish shattered. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her eyes wild with desperation. "Ethan, I can explain," she blurted, stopping short when she saw the agents. "This is a misunderstanding." Agent Carter stood, her voice cold. "Ms. Bennett, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to commit fraud." Claire's face paled as an agent stepped forward with handcuffs. She turned to Ethan, pleading, "You don't understand. My father needed protection. I was only trying to help him." Ethan's jaw tightened, his expression a mix of anger and betrayal. "You helped him by destroying evidence? By delaying justice for an innocent woman?" His voice was low, cutting. Claire's gaze darted to Ava, venom flashing in her eyes. "You have no idea what you've unleashed," she hissed as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. "This won't end the way you think." The agents led Claire away, her protests echoing down the hall. Ava stood frozen, the resignation letter burning in her pocket. The FBI raid had resolved the external conflict. Harold would face justice, and Grace's name would be cleared. But Ava's battle was far from over. She had to tell Ethan the truth before someone else did. Some of the board members lingered in the hallway and whispered among themselves. Ava caught snippets of their conversation. "Harold's arrest could tank our stock," said one. Edward Hayes, a stern man known for his loyalty to Robert Caldwell's legacy. "This foundation Ethan's pushing. It's too risky," muttered another, Patricia Kim, her tone wary. Their skepticism hinted at future resistance, but Ava focused on Ethan. He sank into his chair, running a hand through his hair, the morning's weight evident in his slumped shoulders. "I should have seen it," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Claire was stalling my investigation, missing files, witnesses changing stories. I trusted her." Ava's chest ached at the pain in his voice. She stepped closer, her resolve faltering. "Ethan, you couldn't have known. You were focused on the truth." He looked up, his blue eyes searching hers. "You've been a rock through this, Ava, but you look shaken. This must be overwhelming." His concern was genuine, a lifeline she didn't deserve. Ava's fingers tightened around the resignation letter. The FBI's involvement had changed everything. Justice for Grace was within reach, but her deception remained a secret that could destroy Ethan's trust. "Ethan, I need to tell you something," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. He stood, closing the distance between them. Whatever it is, we can handle it together. The kindness in his tone nearly broke her. Ava opened her mouth, the truth on the tip of her tongue, but the weight of Claire's threat and the board's murmurs outside held her back. She had to confess. She owed him that much. But the fear of losing him, of seeing his warmth turn to betrayal, was paralyzing. The office door stood open, the hallway alive after the raid. Ava took a breath, knowing her following words could shatter everything. Ava Thompson stood in Ethan Caldwell's office, the air thick with the aftermath of the FBI raid that had exposed Harold Bennett's crimes and led to Claire Bennett's arrest for obstructing justice. The morning's chaos, agents, documents, and Claire's venomous warning swirled in Ava's mind, but she focused on the resignation letter in her pocket. Her discovery that Ethan had been working to clear her mother, Grace Thompson's name, had shifted her mission from revenge to alliance, but Claire's threat to reveal her true identity as Grace's daughter loomed large. Ava had come to Caldwell Industries to destroy Ethan, believing him complicit in her mother's ruin. Now, faced with his trust and the board's murmurs outside, she knew she had to confess before someone else, perhaps Claire, or a suspicious board member, exposed her. Ethan stood close, his blue eyes filled with concern. "Ava, you said you need to tell me something," he prompted, his voice gentle but steady. "Whatever it is, we can handle it together." The sincerity in his tone cut through her, a reminder of the warmth she'd grown to cherish. His quiet thanks, his care for the injured worker, his vow to right his father's wrongs. Ava's hand trembled as she pulled the resignation letter from her pocket, its edges worn from her indecision. The board members' voices drifted through the open door, Edward Hayes muttering about stock prices, Patricia Kim questioning the company's liability, adding pressure to the moment. Their skepticism about Ethan's push for justice could complicate her revelation, but silence was no longer an option. "Ethan," Ava began, her voice barely audible, "I haven't been honest with you." His brow furrowed, confusion replacing concern. She took a breath, the words clawing their way out. "My name is Ava Thompson, but that's not the whole truth. Grace Thompson was my mother. I came here to destroy you, to make you pay for what your father did to her." The confession spilled like a dam breaking, each word heavy with years of pain. Robert Caldwell accused her of fraud, ruined her life, and she died believing she'd failed me. I thought you were like him, that you knew, that you covered it up. But then I found your files, saw you've been trying to clear her name, and I—" Ethan stepped back, his face paling as understanding dawned. "You're Grace's daughter," he said slowly, his voice hollow. "You've been here, working for me, lying to me, this whole time?" The hurt in his eyes was a knife to Ava's chest. She nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I wanted justice, Ethan. I wanted to hurt you the way your father hurt her. But then I saw who you are, how you stayed at the hospital and fought for the truth. I realized you're not him, and I started to care about you." The office fell silent, save for the distant hum of the air conditioning and the board members' murmurs outside. Ethan's jaw tightened, his hands clenching at his sides. "Care about me?" he echoed, his voice sharp with betrayal. "You came here to ruin me, Ava. You used my trust, my company, to play some twisted game. How am I supposed to believe anything you say now?" Ava's heart shattered at the raw pain in his words. She stepped forward, desperate to bridge the gap. "It wasn't a game. Not after I got to know you. I wanted to tell you, but I feared you'd hate me. I'm so sorry, Ethan." He turned away, facing the window, his shoulders rigid. "You should have told me from the start," he said, his voice low and broken. "I trusted you, Ava. I opened up to you. I thought—" He stopped, shaking his head. "Get out. I can't look at you right now." The words were a blow, each one landing with brutal precision. Ava placed the resignation letter on his desk, its formal words a pale reflection of her regret. "For what it's worth," she whispered, "I meant everything I said about you being different. And I fell for you, Ethan. I'm sorry I wasn't honest." Ethan didn't respond, didn't turn. Ava's eyes burned as she walked to the door, pausing at the threshold. Outside, Edward Hayes and Patricia Kim stood with other board members, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. "This investigation's a liability," Hayes muttered. "If Ethan's not careful, it'll sink us." Kim nodded, her voice low. "He's too focused on fixing the past. We need to protect the future." Their words underscored the stakes. If Ava's deception became public, it could fuel their case against Ethan's leadership. Ava stepped into the hallway, her heart breaking with each step. The FBI raid had ensured justice for Grace. Harold's arrest meant her mother's name would be cleared. But at what cost? She'd lost Ethan, the man she'd come to love despite her mission. As she rode the elevator down, the weight of her choices settled over her. She'd achieved her goal, but the void left by Ethan's rejection was a wound no justice could heal. The doors opened to the lobby, and Ava walked out of Caldwell Industries, believing it was for the last time, her victory as bitter as her tears. Ethan Caldwell stood at the window of his office at Caldwell Industries, staring at the Atlanta skyline without seeing it. 2 weeks had passed since Ava Thompson's confession, that she was Grace Thompson's daughter, sent to destroy him for his father, Robert Caldwell's sins. Her words had shattered the trust he'd placed in her, the connection he'd felt growing with every shared moment. Her flawless reports, her quiet strength at the hospital, her steady presence amid the chaos of the FBI raid that exposed Harold Bennett's fraud. Ethan had demanded she leave, his anger and betrayal drowning out her apologies. With Ava gone and her resignation letter tucked in his desk drawer, the office felt emptier than ever. The FBI investigation had concluded. Harold's arrest splashed across headlines, and Grace's name was publicly cleared. The media hailed Ethan as a reformer, a CEO who'd uncovered his company's dark past. But the praise rang hollow. He'd lost Ava, the one person who'd seen him not as a corporate titan or Robert's son, but as a man trying to do right. Her deception stung, but as the days passed, Ethan couldn't shake the memory of her tear-filled eyes, her voice breaking as she admitted she'd fallen for him. Had he been too quick to judge her? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock. The HR director, Susan Carter, held a file at the door. "Mr. Caldwell, the attorney for Grace Thompson's estate, is here for your 3:00 p.m. meeting." Ethan nodded, his jaw tight. "Send him in." Moments later, Thomas Reed, a silver-haired lawyer, entered with a leather briefcase. "Mr. Caldwell, thank you for meeting me," Reed said, settling into a chair. "I'm here to discuss the settlement for Grace Thompson's wrongful termination." Ethan leaned forward, his voice firm. "I want to ensure Grace's family receives full compensation for what my father did." Reed opened his briefcase, his expression hesitant. "That's generous, but Grace's daughter, Ava, has refused any settlement. She's requested that all funds be donated to a scholarship in her mother's name." Ethan's chest tightened. Even with her guilt, Ava puts others first. "That's not acceptable," he said. "Ava deserves compensation for her family's suffering." Reed paused, studying him. "She's adamant. She's also left Atlanta. Her forwarding address is in Savannah." Savannah, 200 miles away. The distance felt like a chasm. After Reed left, Ethan pulled Ava's resignation letter from his drawer, its words stark. "Dear Mr. Caldwell, please accept my resignation." No mention of her feelings, her regret, only formality. He stood, needing to move, and found himself walking through the office, seeing it through Ava's eyes. The desk where she'd handed him coffee, the conference room where she'd diffused a crisis with a client, the quiet corner where he'd once caught her staring at the city, her expression wistful. What had she been thinking then? Her mother? Justice? Him? Ethan's investigation into Grace's case had begun 3 years ago, sparked by a discrepancy in his father's private files. He'd hired a private investigator, combed through encrypted records, and interviewed former employees, piecing together Harold's fraud and Robert's complicity. The truth had haunted him. His father's cowardice in scapegoating Grace to protect a board member. Ethan had kept his work secret, wary of board resistance, particularly from Edward Hayes, who revered Robert's legacy, and Patricia Kim, who prioritized profits over ethics. Their murmurs after the raid, "This could tank our stock," echoed in his mind, a reminder of the fight still ahead. That evening, Ethan drove to the cemetery where Grace was buried, a location he'd learned from the FBI files. The headstone was simple: Grace Thompson, beloved mother. Fresh roses lay beside it, Ava's touch evident. Ethan knelt, feeling foolish, but compelled to speak. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Ethan Caldwell," he said, his voice rough. "I'm sorry for what my father did, for the pain he caused you and Ava. I've cleared your name, but it's not enough. Ava's hurting, and I made it worse." His phone buzzed, interrupting his thoughts. A text from an unknown number, later traced to Susan, who'd accessed security logs, read, "Cemetery cameras show Ava visits Sundays at dusk. She brings roses and talks to her mother about you." Ethan's heart raced. Tomorrow was Sunday. The realization hit him. Ava's deception had been born of pain, not malice. She'd come to destroy him, but chose to protect him, nearly leaving without revealing her truth. His anger had closed his eyes to her regret, her love. Ethan stood, the roses at his feet a silent plea for forgiveness. He'd been wrong to push Ava away. Her mission had mirrored his own, a fight for justice against his father's legacy. Tomorrow, at dusk, he'd find her at the cemetery. He needed to hear her truth, to offer his own. The skyline glowed in the distance, but Ethan focused on the grave before him, a reminder that redemption began with facing the past. He had one chance to make things right with Ava, and wouldn't let pride cost him the woman he loved. The sun dipped low over the Savannah Cemetery, casting a golden glow across the rolling hills dotted with headstones. Ethan Caldwell stood behind a towering oak, his heart pounding as he waited for Ava Thompson. The text from Susan, the HR director, had led him here. Ava visited her mother, Grace Thompson's, grave every Sunday at dusk, bringing roses and speaking of him. 2 weeks ago, Ava's confession, that she was Grace's daughter, sent to destroy him for his father Robert Caldwell's sins, had shattered his trust. He'd sent her away, his anger closing his eyes to her regret. Now, after finding his father's unsent letter admitting Grace's innocence, Ethan knew he'd been wrong to judge her so harshly. Ava had come for revenge, but stayed for justice, and he needed to make things right. At precisely 6:30 p.m., Ava appeared, her silhouette framed by the fading light. She carried a bouquet of red roses, her steps slow and deliberate. Ethan's breath caught. She looked thinner, her shoulders hunched as if holding an invisible weight. She knelt beside Grace's headstone, her voice soft but clear in the still evening air. "Hi, Mom," she said, arranging the roses with care. "I did it. Your name's cleared. Harold Bennett's in prison. And everyone knows you were innocent. Even after I lied to him and broke his trust, Ethan ensured that." Ava's voice cracked, and Ethan saw her hands tremble. "I love him, Mom," she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. "After everything I planned, I know I shouldn't have. I do. He could have loved me too, if I'd been honest." The words pierced Ethan, each one a mirror to his regret. He'd spent 3 years investigating Grace's case, uncovering Harold's fraud through old ledgers and witness interviews, driven by guilt over his father's cowardice. Ava's deception had hurt, but her love, evident in her choice to leave rather than hurt him further, was undeniable. Ethan stepped out from behind the oak, his voice quiet but steady. "He did love you, Ava. He still does." Ava gasped, spinning around, her eyes wide with shock. Their gazes locked across the graveyard, pain and longing reflected in each other's faces. "Ethan," she whispered, scrambling to her feet, roses scattering across the grass. "What are you doing here?" Ethan moved closer, his hands in his pockets to avoid reaching for her. "Looking for you," he said. "I got a text saying you come here on Sundays. I needed to see you, to understand." Ava wrapped her arms around herself, as if holding together pieces of a breaking heart. "You shouldn't be here. I hurt you." "I lied." Her voice trembled, but she didn't look away. Ethan took another step, closing the distance. "Why didn't you tell me who you were, Ava? Why leave without giving me a chance to process it?" Ava's laugh was bitter, tears glistening in the dusk. "You told me to get out. You couldn't even look at me. What was I supposed to say? Sorry. I planned to ruin you, but I love you." Ethan's chest tightened. "I was angry," he admitted, his voice raw. "I felt betrayed, but I was wrong to push you away." He pulled a folded letter from his jacket, its edges yellowed. "I found this in my father's safe after you left. It's addressed to your mother, written the day before she died." Ava's eyes widened as she took the letter, her fingers trembling. She unfolded it, reading Robert's words. "Dear Mrs. Thompson, I failed you. Evidence proves your innocence, but I was too weak to act. I pray someone braver will make this right." Ava's tears fell freely, staining the paper. "He never sent it," she whispered. Ethan nodded, his voice thick. "He died with that guilt. I've been trying to fix it, Ava. 3 years ago, I found his hidden files, memos, bank records, showing Harold's fraud. I hired investigators and tracked down witnesses, but Claire kept derailing me. I didn't know until the FBI raid." He paused, searching her face. "You came here to hurt me, but you didn't. You helped me, stayed through the chaos, even when you could have walked away." Ava shook her head, and the roses at her feet were a stark reminder of her grief. "I wanted to destroy you, Ethan. I thought you were like him. But then I saw you at the hospital, fighting for Marcus's family. I saw your notes, your vow to clear Mom's name. I fell in love with you, and it terrified me." Ethan stepped closer, his voice soft. "You tried to protect me by leaving. That's not betrayal. That's love." He reached out, brushing a tear from her cheek. "I'm sorry I didn't listen. I love you, Ava, and I want to start over. No secrets, no lies." Ava leaned into his touch, her resolve crumbling. "Can we start over?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Ethan's answer was a kiss, gentle but fierce, tasting of forgiveness and second chances. Ava melted into him, her hands clutching his shirt, anchoring herself to the moment. When they parted, breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "No more lies," he said. "Just us, figuring it out." Ava nodded, looking at her mother's headstone, the roses glowing in the dusk. "What do you think, Mom?" she whispered. "Can we build something real?" The setting sun broke through the clouds, bathing the cemetery in warm light, as if in answer. Ava took it as a sign, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She and Ethan stood together, hand in hand, the past's wounds still tender, but no longer bleeding. The board's resistance, Edward Hayes's grumblings about liability, Patricia Kim's profit-driven doubts, awaited them. But they had each other for now. The truth had set Grace free, and love had brought Ava and Ethan back together. 6 months after their reconciliation at Grace Thompson's grave, Ava Thompson stood in the lobby of Caldwell Industries, no longer as Ethan Caldwell's assistant, but as the director of the Grace Thompson Foundation. The nonprofit, funded by the company, supported families harmed by workplace injustice, a living tribute to her mother's legacy of fighting for the voiceless. Ava's office on the 45th floor was a warm contrast to the corporate sheen of the executive suites, its walls lined with photos of families the foundation had helped, workers reinstated, whistleblowers vindicated, lives rebuilt. A portrait of Grace, smiling with fierce determination, hung near Ava's door, a daily reminder of why she fought. Today, Ava prepared for a meeting with Elena Martinez, a young woman whose father, a factory worker, had been fired for reporting safety violations. Ava reviewed Elena's file, her heart heavy with the familiar story of corporate greed. The foundation had already helped dozens of families, securing legal victories and financial support. But each case hit close to home. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Ethan appeared in the doorway, holding 2 coffee cups, his blue eyes warm with affection. "Thought you might need this." He offered her a cup, black, no sugar, just as she liked it. "Long day?" Ava smiled, taking the coffee. "Always. But the Martinez case is promising. Their lawyer thinks we can win reinstatement and damages." Ethan settled into a chair across from her, his suit jacket unbuttoned, a sign of the ease they'd built over months of careful honesty. Their relationship had grown slowly, rooted in the transparency they'd promised at the cemetery. No secrets, no lies, just 2 people learning to trust again. "You're doing incredible work," Ethan said, his voice sincere. "Your mother would be proud." Ava's chest warmed, the ache of missing Grace now softened by purpose. "She'd have loved this," she said, glancing at Grace's portrait. "She was always helping people, mentoring coworkers, organizing for better wages. I'm just following her lead." Ethan leaned forward, his gaze steady. "You're more than that, Ava. You've turned pain into something that changes lives." His words carried weight, a reminder of their shared journey from betrayal to love. Before Ava could respond, Ethan's expression shifted, his tone serious. "There's something else. The board's called an emergency meeting tonight. Edward Hayes is pushing to cut the foundation's funding by 60%. He's got Patricia Kim and a few others on his side, arguing it's a financial drain." Ava's coffee cup trembled in her hand. 60%? "Ethan, we have pending cases. Families like the Martinez's depend on us." The board's resistance wasn't new. Hayes, a loyalist to Robert Caldwell's profit-driven legacy, saw the foundation as a liability, while Kim prioritized shareholder value over ethics. Ethan's jaw tightened. "I've been preparing for this. I'm calling for a vote to remove Hayes and his allies from the board. They've been obstructing our reforms since the FBI raid." Ava's eyes widened. "You could lose, Ethan. They could vote you out as CEO." He smiled, a glint of defiance in his eyes. "Then they vote me out. This foundation, your mother's legacy, is worth more than my title. It's about doing what's right." Ava's heart swelled. but fear lingered. "I'm coming with you," she said, standing. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "You don't have to." Ava's voice was firm. "I do. This is Mom's fight, and ours." That evening, the boardroom was a battlefield. 12 members seated around a polished table, their faces masks of calculated neutrality. Hayes, a wiry man with a cold stare, opened the meeting. "The Grace Thompson Foundation has cost us $10 million in 6 months with no tangible return. It's time to prioritize profits." Ethan stood, his presence commanding. "No tangible return?" he countered, clicking to a slide showing a smiling family. The Martinez family. Elena's father was reinstated after exposing safety violations. That company now contracts with us for compliance audits, generating $7 million annually. He moved to another slide. The Carter case. A whistleblower revealed environmental violations. Legal costs were $200,000, but their firm is now our client for remediation, worth $12 million yearly. Doing right is profitable. Patricia Kim leaned forward, skeptical. "Profits are one thing, but every case risks lawsuits against us." Ava stood, her voice clear. "My mother, Grace Thompson, died believing she was a thief because this company failed her. The foundation proves that truth and justice can rebuild trust and revenue." Hayes scoffed. "You're not a board member, Ms. Thompson." Ethan's smile was razor sharp. "She is. Ava owns 15% of Caldwell Industries, which she purchased with her mother's settlement. She's the third largest shareholder." The room erupted in murmurs. Ava addressed the board, her voice steady. "This foundation isn't charity. It's accountability. It's what my mother deserved, what every family we help deserves." Ethan called for a vote. Maintain the foundation's funding and remove Hayes. The tally was swift, 9-3. Hayes and his allies outmatched. Later, in Ethan's office, he pulled Ava into his arms. "We did it," she whispered. Ethan knelt, producing a ring. "Ava Thompson, will you marry me? Will you build a life, a company, a legacy with me?" Tears fell as Ava nodded. "Yes." They embraced, Grace's portrait watching over them. The foundation would thrive, and their love would endure, a testament to justice and second chances.